What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Cheeky Midweeky, where we make strength and conditioning not boring anymore. In today's episode, I talk with the Mark Hoover from Simply Faster, and we talk all things about sports performance training, talk about legends in the field like Coach Johnny Parker, and we also explain why you need to learn more about working in high school strength and conditioning. Get CEUs faster, cheaper, and more convenient than ever before with Strength Coach Network. Hey, it's Justin, here to tell you about how Strength Coach Network can now help you out with our premium membership and CEUs to the NSCA and CSCCa. Upon signing up for our premium membership, you will get 2.0 or 10 CEUs immediately. That is an entire year's worth of CEUs that you are able to access from the convenience of your office. No traveling for conferences, no waiting on flights, no eating out, no expensive hotels. Just the good stuff from great coaches. Now, if you need extra CEUs for past years during the reporting period, we can bundle Fundamentals 1 or 2, which also come with 2.0 or 10 CEUs to your purchase. That way, you're able to take care of your CEUs for the best price, most convenient, and learn from some of the best coaches. If you want more help with this, email us at service@Strength Coach Network or visit us at strengthcoachnetwork.com, and I would be delighted to help you out. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I feel like this is a full circle moment for me, kind of like when I had Coach Boyle on before, because I remember, growing up in strength and conditioning and like reading, Simply Fast articles and all that stuff. So like this is an honor for me, man.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate you having me on.
Let's talk about the genesis of that. Like, talk about your story a little bit for any of our listeners that are unfamiliar.
Well, I started off as a high school football coach. And pretty typical back in the day, late 90s. I left high school for a couple of years and did a graduate assistantship. For the most part, I've been in high school. Back in the late 90s, the way you got the strength conditioning coach job at a high school was the head football coach looked at you and said, "You definitely lift more weight than anybody else on our staff, so you are the strength conditioning coach." So that's how it all started for me, and how that was about 96 or 97 probably. And at that point, I just was kind of right out of college, and I didn't know anything. I think we used your template from the late 90s, which was bigger, faster, stronger, right? Everybody, which, people bash on that a lot, but, for someone that doesn't really know anything about anything with strength and conditioning, it's really not a terrible template, like it keeps things moving, and but so I kind of rolled along that way for about 10 years, and then was at one of the bigger high schools in North Carolina with a good buddy of mine who was the head football coach. And he said, "Hey, listen, I really like what you're doing in the weight room and all that stuff. But I really want you to become more of an expert in it." And he said, so Ethan Reeve, who's, was at Wake Forest, his son was on our football team, on our JV football team. And he said, so Ethan's agreed to, let you just come over there whenever you want. And it was actually a really great setup, man. The principal was like, so he let me go over there for gave me a professional development day like every other week. So I got to go over there and just, absorb. And I will tell you this, I've said this a lot in the past and in times I've written it, is the day that I walked into Ethan's weight room, which I always laugh because anyone that knows him knows he doesn't keep his office in the office. He puts his desk and everything out in the weight room. And see, I know, right? That's where his work's done. So as soon as I walked in there, I literally went from your typical meathead football coach that just, I was very, very confident in what I knew in my mind. I could make kids strong. Like I had a history of being able to increase squats and benches, And then about 5 minutes into meeting Ethan, I said, I don't know anything. And it was evident just because the questions were popping up and the things he was doing. And I was like, okay, he's tumbling. Like, what's happening here? Like we're just his whole process. And, Ethan, I mean, I see him still all the time. He works for Mondo Flooring now, but, he's kind of he's a meathead in a way too. He's a old school wrestling guy, and he's, loves the lifting, but just the holistic overview of training was never really something that entered my mind, because I was spending 80% of my time thinking about football and 20% thinking about what we're doing in the weight room. And then you get into Ethan's room and all the questions start popping up, and you're just like, I tell people that was literally the last moment I was completely confident in anything. like how they always say the first day you start lifting weights is the last day you're happy with how things are going. That was the first day of the rest of my life right there, because I was just like, whoa, like what is happening here? And so I got to bum with him, and I spent a lot of time on this topic, this point of it, but it was really a watershed moment. I got to spend so much time with him over that next year that it just sent me spiraling into the rabbit hole of wanting to pursue education and wanting to, get into, more and more into how to prepare our guys and keep them healthy. And then, during that time, I finally made the transition to where there was a point, Justin, that if I had the ability to stay in the weight room with our team as opposed to go outside with them, I would have always stayed in the weight room, because I didn't really care about what was going on outside. I didn't, I cared about what was happening in that weight room. I mean, it's embarrassing to say now, but, I was that guy that was like, we don't need that. We'll just squat and get faster, Yeah. And now full circle, if I could be outside with the guys on the turf the whole time and let someone else do the weight room, I would almost be happy. But yeah, so that just kind of began the march toward becoming a full-time strength conditioning coach at the high school level, which really didn't exist too much at the public school level, particularly in North Carolina at the time. So I get on staff with he's passed away now, but a legendary high school football coach in the state of North Carolina, Ron Massey, who became a great mentor of mine. But he was the first coach that really let me explore, explore the new things. And he'd kind of look at me and say, okay, I mean, if that's what you think's going to help, and it was great because he was one of the winningest coaches in the state, right? It was awesome. But so then he passed away, unfortunately, and about 2 years later, I got to the point where I was losing interest in Sunday football meetings. I was losing interest in being out on the practice. I tell people now, I would be really ineffective as a football coach, even though I did it for 20 years, because my eye goes to gait and movement. And I'm watching guys go through drills, and instead of saying, hey, your hand placement should be here, I'm like, hey, what's going on with your ankle?
What's up, everybody? Taking a quick break from the show to talk about one of our sponsors, TeamBuildr. I've been using TeamBuildr since 2019 when I was at Towson. I still use it with my remote athletes. I also use it at Goldfinch, which is the private sector gym I train at, and we use it at Centennial, which is the high school that I'm working at. Now, if you're printing on lift cards because you say, oh, I can't afford TeamBuildr, guess what? TeamBuildr has a pre-written grant that you can locate on their website. You simply change the name of you, your organization, and the areas that they highlighted, and they can help you get TeamBuildr at your facility, your university, whatever it is, so that way you can optimize how you train your athletes with this software. Now, TeamBuildr is also a part owner in the Plyomat. The Plyomat is something that I utilize at Goldfinch, and it helps you be able to see how high somebody jumped, the ground contact time, and RSI. You can get all that conveniently right there. You can reach out to your rep from TeamBuildr to be able to get more information on the Plyomat. It's fast, it's reliable, it's convenient, and it's trusted by coaches worldwide. Check them out as well as TeamBuildr in the link down below.
Like, can we, and it's kind of, that's the progression of it. And I had kind of got there I think that was about 2000 and 15, maybe about 10 years ago, where I just went to the principal and I said, I mean, the volleyball team was asking me to help. The wrestling team was asking me to help. The basketball team was wanting me to help. And our principal was kind of cool because his son now plays for the Denver Nuggets, but I had him in 7th and 8th grade. I was kind of doing some training with him on the side. And then when he came over to the high school, it was about the same time I went to our principal and said, hey, I want to get out of football and just be into strength conditioning. And he said, well, if you do that, I mean, that's fine, but we're going to give you a class with just basketball players too. And I was like, hey, I want them all, just give them to me all. I don't care. And so as far as I know, and I've done a little bit of checking this, but I think I was the first public school strength conditioning coach that didn't coach another sport in the state of North Carolina. It's a little more prevalent now, and in private schools they have it. But and I tell people my stipend for the year dropped from my $3,500 football coaching stipend to $927 as my way. But it was worth every second because that's where it kind of took off from there. And then trying not to drag on, but a good buddy of mine, John Herschel, Saraland, Alabama?
Yeah.
Okay, so John and I were good buddies, and he's at York Comprehensive High School at this point, and he's going back to Alabama, where he was at South Alabama for a long time, and his daughter was down there. So he's going to Saraland, and York opens up. And in South Carolina, it's pretty common to have a full-time strength and conditioning coach in the high school. And he calls me up like end of August and says, hey, man, I want to talk to you about this job. It's a great job. It's full-time strength conditioning. You don't have to do anything else. Well, I couldn't leave school in August, like that. I said, well, man, let's just, next time it comes open, have him call me, and I'm just going to roll along here at Piedmont High School. And on October 30th, by the end of the football season, the guy that they had hired could not pass the PE praxis test. He was not certified PE, and that was part of the requirement. They wanted a certified strength coach that was also a certified physical education teacher. And he called me up and he said, hey, man, they really want to talk to you. This was on a Tuesday, I think. So I talked to the AD a little bit. I get on an interview on Thursday. Friday, a buddy of mine calls and says, hey, man, they're calling your references. Friday afternoon, I get a phone call offering me the job, and Monday I took it, and I go to my principal, and they wanted me to wait to the end of the semester, but the semester's ended, so I go to my principal, and he's great. I mean, he played college basketball. He was one of the best principals ever. He said, hey, I mean, you send it, and stay to the end of the semester. I said, oh man. He said, oh, can you stay till Christmas? And this is like 1st of November. I said, well, if you want me to. He said, when do you want to go? And I said, now. And he's like, all right. He said, here's what you do. He said, come in tomorrow, clean all your desk, take the next 2 days off, go down there and hang out, take sick days here. I'll release you on Monday. You can start down there on Monday. So within a week, I was just, I was in South Carolina, and that's kind of where everything took off for me. I got a little more into the social media content. I got a little bit of just a little bit of technology. I started to have some speaking engagements, and that's kind of what led to the interest for Simply Faster. Is I was actually, knowing me, this isn't unusual for me. I was on a little bit of a Twitter debate with a friend of mine, though, a good buddy of mine, and he said, the problem with high school strength conditioning coaches is we're all chasing numbers. And I said, you need to put a little bit more definition on that. I said, because in reality, it's not chasing numbers that's bad. It's the methods you're using to chase those numbers, because we all are kind of chasing numbers a little bit. We're trying to get the kids stronger. We're trying to get the kids faster. We're trying to increase their vertical, their broad, their change of direction deficits. So that's technical. And so we kind of went back and forth for, I don't know, a while. And I get this message on Twitter, and it says, hey, I want to talk to you about your Twitter discussion. Here's my number. So I called. It was Carl Val, and he said, hey, listen, he said, who was with Simply Faster at the time.
What's up, everybody? Taking a quick break from the show to talk about one of our sponsors, Hawken Dynamic. I've been using Hawken Dynamics ever since I was at Towson. Still utilize it today when I'm at the private sector at Goldfinch. Even brought the plates from Goldfinch over to Centennial to do some force plate testing with the football team there. We've done force plate testing with other high school athletes. It is something that you need to get. If you want more help with it about how to practically use it and you want to reach out to us, feel free to reach out to us at service@strengthcoachnetwork.com. Not only do I utilize it with lower body assessments, I use it with upper body assessments, plyo push-ups, prone Y assessments. You can also utilize it for what I call an upper body isometric mid-thigh pull, where essentially you're doing a push-up at the strongest range and you're pushing into an immovable force, so a barbell, same way you do an isometric mid-thigh pull. Like I said, been using them for years. Valid, reliable. The customer service is fantastic. Go check out Hawken Dynamic in the link down below, and you will not be disappointed.
He said, you could write 10,000 words on Twitter, or, I'll pay you to write an article, so let's get you writing instead of debating 10,000 words on Twitter, which I do both, but whatever. So I wrote my first article, and I can't even remember what it was on. And I think, that it ended up being somewhat popular, and I kind of got rolling with there. I think I haven't been able to write as much the last 2 years since I've been full time with them, but just because I'm still coaching. But anyway, I think I ended up with about 50 articles on there, maybe 45 or 50 over the years, and I just started slowly doing some things for them, and they were having me test products, and then they were having me use the products, and then they would send coaches my way and say, hey, when a coach calls, charge us for the time. And then I ended up telling them, hey, if you really want to make me a powerful tool in your toolbox, take the affiliate code off of me and just pay me X amount of dollars per month and let me just make recommendations without the ability of someone to hold that word affiliate over my head. Because even though they were encouraging me to, hey, put these people in the right technologies, regardless of if it's ours or not, because if we don't have it and you're recommending it, maybe we should figure out how to get it in the line. But you can say that all you want, and it still comes down to that affiliate code, and people are going to be able to say, hey, he's an affiliate. So they took that away, and they paid me a part-time stipend, basically a month, and I was able to just really go out and help coaches. And it just became such a passion of mine to test these products, find out the differences. And what you find out is they all work, man. They all work. It just comes down to what your situation is. In 97%, I think form collars didn't work. But most of them worked, right? And I just got this passion, and for it, I'm still coaching full time. They're having me travel to clinics when I can, and then they offer me they basically said, hey, if you ever are interested in getting out of schools, and I had 27 plus years in at that point, if you're interested in getting out of schools and working for us full time, we'd like you to join our team full time. So about 6 months go by, and I decided to kind of look into it and just said, hey, what's this going to look like? And they sent me a contract offer sheet, and it was doing exactly what I wanted to do. And they included in there that they would pay me to continue to coach. Oh. So part of my work day from Simply Faster actually is continuing to coach, and it gives me time to do some private training as well. So and that is the long-winded story of how I got to where I am now. And since then, we've moved to Alachua, Florida, which is outside of Gainesville, which is where Simply Faster's main office is. So I still mostly work from home, but I've got an office if I need it. So,
wow, that's been quite the journey. What has been the biggest learning point? Because one of the things I wrote down here was, all right, you said tumbling back then, and like now everybody's doing it, which made me think about Bob Alejo saying, what do you call it now? I'll tell you what we used to call it.
Yep.
Looking back, what were more things within that realm that you saw that it's like, wow, I'm seeing this come back now, or, very similar within that idea?
ankle and foot stuff, where I saw a lot of guys with their shoes off, and I think that's something that's big now is everybody's starting to understand that the things that people probably knew 100 years ago, about if your feet aren't where they're supposed to be, then, you're building a big race car engine and you put Walmart. I tell my guys that all the time because they look at me like I'm crazy about doing the foot RPR and taking off your shoes for some reason. And I'm not going to sound like an old man here, but for some reason, this generation is anti taking their socks off. I have no idea why. It's really weird. Like they want to take them off. They don't want to show their toes. I'm like, what is happening? But they get really, and I'm like, guys, we're trying to build a race car engine. And then you want to go to Walmart and get the cheapest tires you can find to put on your race car engine. What's going to happen? Right. So, the tumbling, the foot stuff, I think, I'm trying to think of some other things. I know some of the things that I really learned from him that I never thought of was things like, and really being able to learn from Johnny Parker later on.
Ooh.
Things like periodization of your contacts and plyometrics. I never thought about that, I never thought about it. Periodization of your yardages of sprints and things like that, things from the system. You look, that's probably an even bigger impact and man, my experience with Johnny Parker was absolutely fantastic. You have 2 seconds so I can tell you about that?
Please do. And what I wrote down here was Johnny Parker was so gracious with his time. The number of times that he let me call him and he would talk for an hour or two back when I was at Maryland in 2012 and 2013. So gracious with his time.
And then when he was done, But so here's my story about Johnny Parker. I go and see I'm at Eric Cash's place, South Carolina High School Strength Coach Association thing, and Tony Decker speaking there, who ended up becoming a good buddy of mine. And he's talking about what I didn't know at the time, but he's talking about the system, right? And this is before the book came out. And it's just fitting for me. I'm a very the way the blocks fit in, and it's just a math calculation, right? So I go up to him afterwards and I said, hey, I need to know more about this. And he said, hey, just drive down to Coastal Carolina and we'll talk. So I go down, and about 2 hours into into us talking, and we're going through their workouts. He takes me in the office and he's like, you seem like a good guy. He said, so I'm about to show you something. He said, but you can't tell anybody about it. You can't write about it, and you can't take pictures of it. So I'm like, oh my God, what's he? I know, right? This is unbelievable.
Is there a dead body in
here? Yeah, I know, right? So he opens up this drawer and he pulls out this old notebook, weathered, beat up notebook, and he lays it down. And he starts opening the pages. It was Johnny Parker's original notebook he took with him to the Soviet Union.
Oh, shoot. So
Tony tells me how Johnny was his mentor, and it took him years before Bill Parcells would allow Johnny to let Tony even come in the facility. And it was all, but he said, listen, they're about to write this book, so you can't, he goes, I'm going to teach it to you, but you can't tell anybody else about it. So I'm like, okay. So we spent the next 6 hours on the board, and he was just drawing up. So then the book comes out. Johnny Parker speaking at that same conference the next year, and I go up to him, and he is, he's just such a great human being. And I introduced myself, and he said, Coach Hoover, it's been great. Just give me a call. We'll talk. I said, okay. So then I go home, and as on Facebook, suggested friends pops up, and this is classic Coach Parker, right? Suggested friends pop up, and it says Johnny Parker. So I send him a friend request. And not 2 minutes later, I get a message, and he says, Coach Hoover, he says,
taking a quick break from the show to talk to you about one of our sponsors, PowerLift. I used PowerLift when I was at Harvard, Maryland, and the University of Iowa. I was also part of the staff that had the new weight room at the University of Iowa, the 32-rack beautiful facility. I was a part of that. I also have Powerlift's equipment nowadays. Powerlift Strong, made here in the great state of Iowa, in the great country of the United States. They're able to work with you on any customizations that you need, logos, height, whatever it is, the limitations that you have. Their equipment is strong. The people there, they're very good people. Check them out in the link down below. And if you have any questions on how to work with them, reach out to us at service@strengthcoachnetwork.com, and we would be delighted to help.
We can be Facebook friends if you want, and you can see the crap that I post that you don't care about, and I'll see the crap that you post that I don't care about. He said, or here's my phone number. Let's just be friends. And I said, I was like, holy, like Coach Johnny Parker's like, hey, let's jump on a phone game. He's asking me to, I felt like a little kid, right? And so I said, Coach, that would be amazing. I said, I'm helping my daughter homework right now, but I'll call you as soon as I can. He said, Coach, listen. He said, I give my phone number to a lot of people, and a lot of them don't call. He said, don't be one of those guys. I said, I'll call you, Coach. So then, you're like, is Coach Parker busy? Should I call him now? What am I going to say when I call Coach Johnny Parker? Like, hey, Coach Parker, it's Mark Hoover. Like, what am I supposed to say to Coach Johnny Parker, right? And so I don't call. And I kid you not, 2 weeks later, ding, I look down. It's a message from Johnny Parker, and he says, Coach Hoover, it's okay that you don't want to be friends. You're not the first one that didn't want to call me and talk, and you probably won't be the last. He said, I'm not offended in any way. And he said, if you need me, just give me a call, but it's okay. And I'm like, no, Coach, I'll call you right now. Like, can I call you right now? So I got on the phone with him, and I talked to him, at least once a week for probably a year or more. And then, some things happened where he wasn't feeling good, so I wasn't calling. And then it's kind of one of those things where I've talked to him at a clinic, but I haven't, I should probably give him a call because I live in Florida now. I'm only 2 hours from him. But the best part of Coach Parker's story is I had VBT I had push bands back in 2015 or something. So I go to York, and it's probably like 2018 or 19, and I finally get some VBT again. And I call him up, and I'm so excited because I get to talk about VBT with Coach Parker, right? And he goes, Coach Hoover, he said, we had VBT all the way back in the 70s. He said, I said, oh my, really? Are you serious? He said, oh yeah. So I'm thinking, all right, Coach Parker's going to tell me about something that predates Tendo, like the Russians slipped him in his bag, and he snuck it out of Bulgaria or something, right? And he's like, yep. He said it was called a whistle and a stopwatch. And but Coach Parker. But a lot of the things, going back to your original question, a lot of the things that you see in the system, the Soviets, say what you want about the drugs and whatever, right? But they tested everything. They don't just know about, and I had this conversation with Coach Parker. They don't just know about how steroids work. Trust me, they were testing all the other things too, because they wanted the best results. Their whole national pride was built into being successful in athletics. So, a lot of the things that they were doing, came out later after, Dr. Yesis got in there with the with the shock method. And as Coach Parker told the story in the book, those guys had Dr. Rosenberg, who emigrated over and taught those guys, who all those guys, he was telling me all those guys, when they reached out to Dr. Rosenberg, Coach Parker, Coach Vermeil, I can't remember who all the guys that wrote the book were, but they were all the big name guys. And they said that the guy red penned their whole program and said, you freaking Americans and your powerlifting and your bodybuilding, why don't you train athletes? And so brought him in, and he taught him all that, the system. And, a lot of that stuff in there, people, are kind of just finding out about. But that's probably 70 years old, right? So I think if you ever get to the point, if anybody, and I firmly believe this, if anybody ever gets to the point where they feel really comfortable, like I know it, like I got this, I'm not, it's probably time to retire, get out of it. Like, I mean, it's just not, I had it was unbelievable blessing to be able to speak about high school VBT use right after Tommy Moffitt spoke about using VBT at the college level at a clinic 2 years ago. So I got to kind of bum around a little bit with him. I mean, he's one of the best coaches in the history, strength coaches in the history of strength conditioning, and he's still asking questions of the high school guys that were sitting around. I mean, he was sharing his ideas, but he was still asking questions about some of the things, and it's just, I'm a big believer that you better understand you don't know what you don't know, and there's going to be, it's not a way. The way isn't to go and change your core philosophies every time you read something, right? But I'm always looking for the little things that maybe I missed or didn't understand. And, like the whole, the thing with altitude drops over the last couple of years that that probably goes back to, the Soviet era. And, I would have never thought I'm having kids drop off 54-inch boxes and land, like things like that. But those things are just little things that I've added that I've learned over the years. And I think that I have no misconception that I'm an expert in anything, because I'm trying to just be the best I can be for the situation that I'm in and the athletes that I have. And if you stop chasing that knowledge and you start thinking, I got it, like this is it, like this, there's no other better way, you're probably at your point of where your effectiveness begins to decrease big time. And I think that is, not to completely shift gears, but that is one of the major issues I see in high school strength conditioning right now. And that's why there seems to be it's getting better, but there sometimes seems to be a real battle sometimes between high school football coaches and high school strength coaches. There's a growing center where we're all working together. Like, I have no problem where I'm at. It's awesome. But I actually had a conversation about VBT with a pretty successful football coach in Georgia a couple years ago. And he said to me, the easiest way to get fired from your football coaching job is to hire a strength coach. Yeah, because he said, if you're not the one deciding how much they're going to lift and how much they're going to run, then you're asking for trouble. And I just kind of said, Coach, I think you are working with the wrong strength and conditioning coaches. Because, it's like you have a linebackers coach, right? And you have an offensive and defensive coordinator. And I think that there's faults on both sides of it. But one of the big things is, in high school particularly, is coaches win games. And when they win games, they pull into that idea of, I'm a great football coach, a fact that I am also great at anything that stems or is related to being a great football coach. And most of the time, you're a great football coach because either you're super smart, you have a great staff, you have great players, or you have players that are better than everybody else's players. And in high school, there's such a wide range that, and on our end, there's too many strength coaches that tie in, we do this and win, so this is what's making us win. And it's the same thing for us. I would guess that, and I told a good buddy of mine, took a job at like a traditional football powerhouse from a pretty average football school a few years ago. And when he called and told me he took a job, I said, dude, you just got so much smarter. You're going to be speaking on the strength and conditioning speaking circuit now, because you're going to be winning football games and everybody's going to want to know, and you're going to be doing the exact same thing you were doing with that 5-5 team, except now you're doing it for a team that's beating the doors off of people, and it's going to make you a lot smarter. So I think that's one of the big things is in high school sports is, yes, we're going to blame some of the coaches that think I've got it mastered because I've won. So I know we're going to lift weights this way, and we're going to run this way, and we're going to condition this way, regardless of what any other professional in the field says about it, because we've won games, which that's the wrong way to take it, obviously, because you could be doing all the wrong stuff and still win games, and that's an absolute fact. But then we've also got coaches on our side of it that are weighing too much in on if we're winning, it's because of me. And I'm not trying to say that either is a negative, because you are a part of it, right? I mean, if you do a really great job preparing the athletes and then you hand them off to a really great football coach, that's only going to multiply, your ability to win. But I think there's still a problem in the high school space about particularly football coaches versus strength coaches, and that back and forth over, we traditionally have done this and won, and strength coaches saying, well, that's dumb, so don't do it. That's definitely not the tact. I think that one of the reasons that I've been able to almost always have a good football coach situation, even though I've coached on a staff with one current state Hall of Fame coach and two that will be. I'm not sure if I think Coach Matt, so I might have two that are already in their state and one. And then some other really good coaches. And the coach I work for here is I'm working football here. He's one of the winningest coaches in the area. Those guys could all be really like, hey, this is what we did, so this is what we're going to keep doing. But as a high school strength coach, it's really our job to listen to the football coach and say, okay, here are some things that he definitely wants to see. And it's probably that way in college. I mean, I'm sure it's that way in college. Here are some things that those are just going to be his, like right now where I'm at, we are never going to be sprint-based football like we were at Metro Atlantic Christian where I was in North Carolina, where we didn't do any traditional conditioning at all. We used practice as our conditioning. We used tempo change of direction in the summer as our conditioning only. And we ran sprints, 3 or 4 sprints a week, and that was it. Here, they believe more in a little bit more volume and extra sprints. We're not going to be sprint-based football. So instead of going in and saying, Coach, I think this is dumb, we should do something different. You need to go in there and say, okay, how can I use my expertise to tweak the things that the football coach wants us to do so that he trusts me? Because then when they have that trust, now you can make changes down the line as opposed to going in and saying, this is what we have to do. So, that's my little, I don't even know how we got on this topic, but that's my current frustration is why are we all not figuring out how to work together so that the kids will benefit? Because I don't think there's nobody that can realistically tell me that if you have a good football coach and a good strength coach working together, that's not better for the kids. Yeah, I mean, it's you'd be crazy to say that, but yet that's what people are saying. Not everybody, but so my current kind of push is I'm trying to bring those groups together. Not that I'm completely influential, but if I can influence a few coaches to say, hey, let's take a little bit look at different things, and that's going to help us expand the field of high school strength conditioning, because realistically, the NSCA can say we should have a CSCS in every high school room in the country. That's never going to happen because it's always going to be dominated by the high school football coach. It just is. That's just the way it's going to be. But if we can convince the high school football coaches to push to have somebody that's qualified, even if it's a football coach on his staff. The kids win, right? The kids win. And I think that is something that is of utmost interest and importance to me currently.
Well, if you look at Moses Cabrera and Bill Belichick, right? Those two on the same page. In Moses' episode on the show, he talked about Bill understood stuff. He's not a sports scientist, but he understood work to rest ratios, understood practice volume. So that right there is an example of when coaches are on the same page with the strength staff, how good it is. And I think you do talk about an underlying issue, because I see it at the high school that I'm at, where even sometimes the coaches that do train their athletes there, maybe they want to do this thing that they saw because of mental toughness, or this coach doesn't want the athletes to train because they don't understand. What's up, y'all? Taking a quick break from the show to talk to you about another one of our sponsors, Vitruve. I've been utilizing Vitruve for a while now, and I absolutely love the convenience of this app. The encoder is at a price that you cannot beat compared to the competitors. Also, I don't personally like the camera apps. I've known that they continue to break down, and I really enjoy having this encoder attached directly to the bar. Vitruve does that. Not only does it do that, but it'll show me velocity loss during the set, shows me average velocity, all of it right within the app. Not only that, for the app on the individual athlete, there's a Vitruve Teams app where now, as the coach, I can see all the results from my athletes. I can API that into my TeamBuildr, and now everything that I'm trying to do, get better competition, better intent in the weight room, I am able to do with Vitruve. If you want more information about them, click the link down below, or you can ask us questions directly at service@strengthcoachnetwork.com, and we would love to answer those questions for you. I truly believe it does fall back on, it's the strength coach for not educating, it's the sport coach. Like, find a way to make it work, just like a marriage. Like my wife and I don't see eye to eye on everything, but we find a way to continue to bend and shake and make things work.
You know, the most powerful word that I've found in this situation is series of words is, that's a really good idea, but why are you wanting to do that? Like, let's talk about your reasoning of why. Well, then they'll say, well, I want to get him in shape, or I want him to be mentally tough, or I want him to this. And then you can just go back and say, once they trust you, you can say, well, what if we could do it a little bit differently? And not only could we probably get them in the position we can answer your why, but I could give you 10 minutes extra practice time every week. Little things like that. Just find out their why and try to meet them where they're at, because their why probably oftentimes stems from, I don't know what I don't know. They know what they did for the last 20 years, right? We won 10 state championships doing it this way. Okay. But maybe there's even room to improve a little bit more. One of the reasons that I took the job where I'm at right now, I say job, I'm just helping out over there, but one of the reasons that I'm at the school I'm at now is because we were introduced by a mutual friend, the head coach, and I said, Coach, you've played for 3 consecutive regional championships in Florida. You've won a bunch of games. Like, you got athletes all over the place. It seems like you're doing a pretty good job. And he said, yeah, but we've lost 3 consecutive regional championships. He said, we're probably doing a lot that is right. He said, but I want to bring you on to see if there's anything that we're not doing right that might help us get past the regional championship game. Yeah. And I was like, this is going to be a good spot. This is going to be a good spot. And I have been overruled on some things already. And you know what? When he says, no, this is the way we're going to do it, I say, okay. And I coach effort. I coach my tail off on the effort for the kids. I don't concern myself with, we're on our 10th sprint. Like, why are we should have only ran 4 sprints. No, I'm out there hooting and hollering, and I'm coaching effort, because, that's how I'm going to earn the trust of the coaching staff, not by standing in the corner and pouting because we're running like, why are we running 100 yards? It's stupid. Like, this is, I mean, not that that's what's happening or that that's what I would say, but, like standing in the corner pouting as opposed to just, all right, coach, hey, it's his show, right? It's the head coach's show. You're there to be an advisor, an assistant, someone that can help keep the kids healthy, help notice things that the coaches can't notice. It just from a time standpoint. This is another argument I have with people about, I'm a head football coach, I'm a strength coach. Okay, I get it. So you're probably doing a pretty good job, but think about it. You have to, just like I did, you have to be thinking about football almost all the time. And then you think about strength and conditioning, even if it's 20% of the day. That's probably a lot for a head football coach. Well, you know what I think about 100% of the day? I don't give a crap what plays you're running or who's playing left guard. I don't care. I only want our athletes to thrive. My only goal is to build an environment where our athletes can thrive. And when I hand them off to the coaches for position drills and practice, they're the best they can be. And they understand how to move and how to do different things so that the coach can say, all right, now this is, you've done a good job. And now we're going to move on to football. And then I go over on the sideline and I cheer. Right. And then, when I see the quarterback getting screamed at because he threw a bad pass and his head's down, I go over to him and I do a little RPR and say, hey man, you know why he got on you, or, like, so, but yeah, it's definitely a growing space for sure, but we have a long way to go.
Yeah, we do have a long way to go because there are some strength coaches that do get paid good in the high school setting, and bravo to them. Anybody that wants to tear those coaches down, shame on you. No, we need to be a rising tide raises all ships. So we need to encourage those people to keep earning that they're earning so we can get more coaches to get paid and have multiple strength coaches in there, because having one strength coach for an entire high school is like having
crazy.
One nutritionist for an entire college. It's wrong. Yeah. It's just wrong.
And you go to pay, I mean, I've had, over the years, I've had people say, you ever thought about getting into college strength and conditioning? I'm like, nope, because I was a graduate assistant football coach and I watched what those guys did compared to, and I said, and there's not too many entry-level jobs where you're going to start off at $60,000 or $70,000 a year in strength conditioning, I would guess, just as year one, you're $65,000 in full benefits. Oh yeah, you got 2 weeks off at Christmas, a week off at spring break, and we're only going to train 3 days a week in the summer. Oh, and right, there's 2 dead periods in July too. So hey, enjoy. Like no, or can you call in and say, hey, I got to take my dog to the vet today, and so I'm not going to be there today. Have the coaches run my class, right? I mean, would that have flown at the NCAA? No, like, hey, I got to take my dog to the vet. That's happened to me, like my dog's sick. I got to go to the vet. Sorry, send me videos of the workout. So, but yeah, I mean, and now, I had somebody call about a really, really good job, not necessarily to see if I wanted it, but just to see if I knew anybody. But like, I mean, they're talking about starting people off at $80,000, $85,000.
Huh.
And you're in class all day. So, you might not have anything after school because all the athletes are in class.
Awesome.
It's like high school. So oftentimes I'll have young people reach out and say, hey, I'm in college, strength conditioning. What's your advice? And I say, while you're there, get your PE certification, because you can, there are plenty of schools that will hire people that do not have PE certifications. But how did I get my job at York that paid $70,000 a year at the time? I got it because I had a PE certification and a strength conditioning certification. So when people say, and there used to be I haven't seen it in a while. Maybe you have the gold standard debate. What's the gold standard of certification? And people used to get so mad at me because you know what I would say? The gold standard for certification for high school coaches is a PE certification,
It
because
is.
that will get you actual gold. Like, it will actually pay your bills. I could have went into the principal at York Comprehensive High School and he said, so tell me about your qualifications. I could have said, I'm ABCD certified. I've got an Alpha 1, 2, 3 certification. I'm a, I'm a second level Jedi Knight, like he would have been like, oh, interesting. But you're also PE certified? Yes.
Okay, cool.
You're hired.
Now I can actually hire you.
Yeah.
Yes. Everything else has
Yes,
no
everything else
bearing
is
on
just
the ability
whatever.
to
Like,
actually hire you.
yes. So, and I've had people like really get after me about that. The people that you probably know who they are, from social media, like really get on me and say, that's terrible. We're not, we have to have a standard of, and I'm like, listen, until schools actually recognize across the board that those certifications mean something, and then someone's always going to pull out, well, this job listing right there, it says must be all right, that's 1 out of 27,000 high schools. Okay. Like, but if you're a certified teacher, you have guaranteed yourself an opportunity. You might not get the job, but if you're a certified teacher, you're guaranteed an opportunity to get in the door. So imagine what if you have both strength conditioning and PE certifications. Now you've got all kinds of options. Oh, you want to go pro baseball? Go pro baseball. You've got what you need, right? You want to go coach at a high school? You got what you need. You want to take a graduate assistantship? You've got what you need. I would highly recommend, and I know Eric Cash in South Carolina was really working with some of I think it was Winthrop University there in Rock Hill, about making a dual program. Since I've moved, I've kind of lost touch of what's going on in South Carolina, but they were really pushing for that dual program of, you're going to come out of college with, your exercise science degree, your PE certification, and your CSCS. I mean, boom. Now you've got the gold, or the chance to get the gold, right?
Amen to that, because anybody listening, even having a PhD, that does not allow you. That's not good enough. It's not.
No. And, and sometimes they'll make an exception, but I promise you, they're going to say, hey, you have to take these classes though, or you have to, take another exam, or, there's just.
So exactly that happened to me when I was at Towson and I wanted to get a high school job, and they're like, dude, you're super qualified, during this interview process. But if we do hire you for the first year, we're going to have to put a PE teacher in the room with you, and you're going to have to be sitting for this accelerated teaching degree where the first year you take online classes, you go to one class once a month or once a week, and you'll have your probationary teaching license after 1 year. You then can be employed. Nobody else is with you. After that first probation year hired here, you would then have a full-time teaching license. And during the interview process, they had other candidates that had worked in college before, had their license, and they're like, hey, listen, you're qualified. We love you, but we have other people that are, maybe less qualified and less education, but have a teaching degree. Sorry.
And that is, unfortunately, the reality, because
Correct.
The person that's probably making the decision on whether you can be hired or not hired could care less about strength conditioning. It's an administrative person, an assistant superintendent that's looking over and they're going to go to the principal and say, I mean, I see all these sports things on here, but I'm looking for a PE teacher. And, and the current teacher shortage is helping out a little bit, because they are, like, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, South Carolina actually included physical education in the emergency needs, which is mind-boggling to me, because when I first went into education, I did elementary ed all the way up to my first student teaching, and then I was like, nope, I'm going back to school and getting my high school. But because that was the advice everybody gave me back in the early 90s. There's going to be 1,000 applicants for every PE job. There's a shortage of males in elementary ed. If you want a job, go elementary ed. So when they came out and said, oh, there's an emergency shortage of PE teachers, I thought, wow, it's weird days, because, Um, it's just so that's helping, and that will probably, unfortunately, continue. But you still want to set yourself up if you can with all the boxes checked.
I want to go back to the Soviet stuff because
Yeah.
Joseph Johnson and Jeff Moyer and I have had podcast episodes, and we've talked about like the fact that Joseph's like, there's nothing new. Like nothing
Yeah.
new has been done. Like when you read Doc stuff and you read, anything that Bondarchuk had put out, and that's half the reason why Jeff and I are going to be doing that biomechanics course, because it's like all these articles and things that you see coaches doing nowadays. Here's the original manuscript from 1960 that Doc Yessis brought over and gave to Jeff. Like, here it is. Like, and let's talk about what it really means from the source. How do we continue to do a good job, try to push the needle forward, but still recognize the fact that there is nothing new under the sun? But how can we apply it best, still look and chase that holy grail?
That's a great question. I'm sorry, hear my dog barking. Sorry about that. No, go lay down. But I would say that's a tough question. It's just a process of getting that out, and social media is really helping that, because people like Jeff, who I've never met, but I've talked to him on social media briefly, but I've listened to the podcast, because of the whole Soviet system. I went down that rabbit hole with Doc Yessis, and and of course buying the crazy books from Joseph Johnson's his book company there. He's always got some great
Ultimate Athlete.
Yeah, he's got some great books that are on there, and you're just talking about things that have been taken from the Soviet language or the Russian language and transferred to English. Yep. I think though the unfortunately it's probably less going to be about written books and articles and more about people that are doing these things and are wanting to share these ideas, doing it on social media and in leading to clinics that will lead to people asking questions that leads to interaction. Because one of the cool things about the current era is if they're willing to communicate with you, you can talk to anybody from your kitchen, right? I mean, it's, if they'll respond to you, you can talk to anybody about anything, I mean, I'm in a really good situation because I get to travel all these clinics. And so I feel like I've made a lot of friends that I can reach out to, and not everybody does that, but they're all still there. Like if you message just about anybody, for the most part, at some point, they're going to respond to you, and they might say, hey, I don't have time to go in depth on this, but here's some information. Yeah. But I really feel like that is the new way. People aren't reading as much as watching art videos that might lead to articles, but I think very few people are looking at a research article and not just reading the abstract, right? They're just reading the abstract and rolling on. But I do think it's still important for people like Joseph and Jeff and yourself and anybody else that's, Dan Fichter just puts out some great stuff. Adam Archuleta is starting to talk, right, about stuff and just put stuff out there. I think all of these things can be shared big time via social media and visual things, YouTube and visual things, more than maybe the written books, unfortunately. But I think the social media is probably the way.
True. And I was talking with Matt Jordan the other day, and yes, it is good to have these little short exchanges and read an article and watch a podcast and do that. And then there is really good value in, diving deep and really chewing on something like a research article or a book.
Yep.
Like there's tons of good value in that.
Oh, I agree totally. I just feel like people aren't going to do it, in mass. kids don't read, and and books just aren't something that like. I mean, I can't even get my daughter to answer the phone half the time. She'll send me a text and say, "Can you just text me?" Because that's just the. And I think as we age, those people are going to start filling in those, and it's going to be a world of mass communication through social media for one reason. I still like to dive in, not as much, and I'm guilty of it.
True.
I have, let me see. These 2 books I got recently.
Okay. Kurt's
and
book's awesome.
Yeah. And you know what? I read them a little bit here and there. I take them on my plane, and I've pretty much got through Kurt's book. But there was a time when I would have sat down and read that entire book in a sitting, but instead, distractions. I think social media, cell phones, and things. And here I go. I'm being an old man again, but it really has impacted people's attention spans and willingness to do some things. So my thought on it, though, is that's never going to change. I mean, it's only going to get worse before better. So there's definitely value in diving into the books and articles. But I really feel like if you really want to spread a message, it almost has to be over social media. It's sad but true, sad but true.
Amen to that, man. We've been chewing this up, chopping it up for about an hour now. What would be
I know.
That's awesome. What would be something that you kind of want to leave all the listeners with? Because we've got listeners in high school, college, pro, tactical, private, all over the gambit, young, old, established, in the middle. What's kind of a big thing that you want to tell everybody just based off of your tenure and your experience?
I think that all of those categories you just gave off are very specific spaces with a lot of overlapping things. The best way, and this is completely my opinion, the best way for us all to improve and all work together is to remember that and look at each individual space as its own entity with its own sets of challenges and circumstances, and avoid being negative about a space that you do not have direct experience in, and instead let's talk and ask questions and find out why people are doing things. I tweeted something the other day and then I deleted it because this really happened. There was a couple of coaches that have never spent a second coaching the high school team sport athlete on social media, bashing some of the things that technology wise that high school coaches are doing. And someone reached out to me and said, "What do you think of this?" And I said, honestly, that might be true in their situation, but they don't have an intimate knowledge of what we do on a day-to-day basis. So their opinion, as far as it being negative and critical, kind of falls under if a tree falls in the woods, does anybody, hear it? If there's no one there, like, does it make a noise? And I think that pushes people apart, because you just went and said, hey, some of the people that are seen as best high school coaches in the country are using some technology and they're doing it really well. And someone from completely outside the space, although in the strength conditioning space, comes on and says, yeah, but that's high school coaches shouldn't be worrying about that. They shouldn't be doing that. It's, how do you know? So instead, why not reach out to those coaches and say, hey, tell me about what you're doing with this, so I can make, you may still think it's a waste of time. You may think VBT or GPS is a giant waste of time for high schools, but I don't. I see extreme value in it, and I'm an actual practitioner in that space. I would never think about calling you up and saying, dude, what you're doing with those college athletes, what are you doing? That's stupid. Like, no, I have no, like, clearly, you are an expert in that space. Like, I want to know, hey, he's doing that. Why is he doing that? And is there any way I can take some of that cool stuff, and even if I have to tweak it a little bit, maybe use it in my space? That would be so much more of a bringing the community together as opposed to pushing it apart situation. If people in all of those spaces that don't have, like, I'm never going to tell a tactical coach how to train tactical athletes because I have no idea.
Yep.
And I would expect that. And, there's a big debate always between private sector coaches and high school coaches about things that should be done. Well, if you're a private sector coach and you've never been in a room of 40 ninth grade football players, don't talk to me about what's going on at the high school space. Just like I've never been in a room with, a big gym full of, I do train privately, but never more than 2 or 3 kids at a time. I'm not going to try to tell someone that trains 500 people in a day how to do their job at the private side because I don't know what the ins and outs are. Instead, let's just chop it up back and forth, right? Like, ask questions and let's be a supportive community instead of a separative one.
There's no better place to end the conversation right there. Mark, I greatly appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Thanks for watching that video. If you enjoyed it, click right here for videos just like that, and make sure you click here to subscribe to our channel. Have a great rest of your day.